With the Neo Egoist League about to end, our main boy Isagi is bound to have one last final evolution, but what is it? He just lost to both his rivals, first to Kaiser and then to Rin, and now there is only one more goal before the PXG game ends. So how will Isagi awaken for the finale of this match? This is Isagi's last time to evolve before the U20 World Cup, so a lot of different possibilities open up. Does he gain a new weapon? Does he unlock more of his ego? Perhaps use an entirely new player? We're going to be answering all of those questions and more as I give my ultimate theory about Isagi's final awakening in BLUELOCK's Neo Egoist League. Seriously, every single piece of this theory connects into one another, so really make sure you watch until the end to find out how it all works. So first, we have to talk a little about Isagi's current state. This is so important because it explains why Isagi needs this final awakening. In the PXG game alone, Isagi has been on a roller coaster. He's sometimes all the way at the top, and he's sometimes all the way at the bottom. And right now, I would say he's at the bottom. Recently, we saw Isagi lose to Kaiser, who scored using the Magnus, and then to Rin, who scored the most recent goal. And that was a complete and utter disaster. Rin was like a man sent from Mars specifically to destroy Isagi. I've never seen anyone get scared in a match like this. Isagi looks like he's seen the boogeyman, especially considering Rin beat him and Bastard Munich once, ran the fade back because he wasn't satisfied, and then beat him again. So it was like kicking you while you're down. Not being able to stop his rivals, feeling frustrated, and then the final nail in the coffin, your literal idol says he was using you, but we'll get into that later. And even though Isagi scored a goal at the start of this match, you can say that the final goal is really what matters. Kaiser, Rin, Isagi, the big three rivals for this match are all tied. They all have scored a goal, so the next one is really the true winner. At this point in time, it's important to know that Isagi is being used as a stepping stone, one, to help Kaiser evolve, and two, for Rin to grow and just get stronger. Going from the star at the start of the match scoring a goal to now just being used as a stepping stone and unable to stop any of his rivals, it's no doubt Isagi is currently in a big slump. So what exactly changed? Why is Isagi all of a sudden being used as a stepping stone just to make other players better? Why is he losing to Rin and Kaiser, and what can Isagi do to change that? How can he evolve? Answering that question as to why Isagi is in his current state really paints the picture for why he hasn't been performing. This doesn't have to do with anything like his weapons just aren't working anymore, or that he just can't keep up physically. Instead of physical specs or weapons, it has to do with the mental side of things, his actual mentality. Unlike how in other games you can see his physical specs affecting him, during PXG this isn't the case at all. His weapons are working perfectly fine. Isagi's current and main problem is the fact that he's mentally tunnel visioned on something. It's clouding his judgment or reading of the game, and until he fixes that, he won't evolve, and Kaiser and Rin will just steal the show. What he's tunnel visioned on is the fact that he just lost twice in a row, and both times he was challenged after that. One with Kaiser for the final goal, and then the second time with Rin with his whole "you have to kill me" thing. Isagi is tunnel visioned on surpassing both Rin and Kaiser. That's what he's been focusing on before the game, during the game, and currently in the game. He's ignoring other factors and just focusing on surpassing or beating Rin and Kaiser, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. We've seen plenty of players in BLUELOCK just focusing on beating their rival. Before this game, and Isagi specifically, it's holding him back a lot from his final evolution and why he's been in this slump. I'm so positive that this is the problem for Isagi because we've seen so many clues leading up to this. But before showing you all the clues, make sure to hit the subscribe button. It took a long time at gathering every single piece of evidence together, and with BLUELOCK Season 2 finally out and the NEL ending soon, you're going to want to subscribe for everything BLUELOCK. Alright, the first thing we need to look at is something I think everyone overlooked, and it doesn't come from Isagi, but actually Ego Jinpachi. If we go back a few chapters to chapter 277, we could see Ego dialoguing over the PXG game, talking about Rin's Destroyer mode, Loki subbing in, and the finale of the match. But the most important dialogue was him at the end saying, "Don't you dare try to become geniuses." Now, honestly, this line makes no sense. Why would the players try not to become geniuses? When everyone first saw this, not only were we confused, we just ignored it. But this line makes so much sense now, only in this theory. Now, remember how we're talking about Isagi being hung up on Rin and Kaiser? I believe this is exactly what Ego is referring to. Isagi is so tunnel visioned on what Rin and Kaiser are doing, both players who are geniuses in their own right, Rin with Destroyer mode and Kaiser with the Kaiser Impact, that Isagi is trying to be like them, a genius. Now, reaching their level is one thing, but trying to do what the genius players like Kaiser and Rin do is almost impossible because it's specific to them. Rin is a genius because of Destroyer mode. We haven't seen anyone with it. It's specific to him. Kaiser is a genius because of Kaiser Impact. We haven't seen anyone with it because it's specific to him. The only other player that rings a bell with the word genius is Itoshi Sai, and the context works the exact same way too. He's a genius because of his dribbling technique. Now, what all of these players have in common are that these weapons or abilities are specific to them, maybe even genetically specific to them, and that's what makes them a genius. Ego specifically says, don't you dare try and become geniuses because it's something that's unique to only them. You can't gain their weapons, you can't do what they do because they were just born different. And maybe that's unfair, genetics do play a huge role in stuff like sports, but there is one more piece of dialogue that Ego adds on, and it's him saying his signature line, "Don't you dare try to become geniuses, you lumps of talent." This is quite literally over a panel of Isagi as well, so not only do I think it's referring to him, that last line is a clue for Isagi's awakening. Instead of trying to become a genius like Rin or Kaiser, Isagi needs to focus on himself and his talent. Hence why Ego says that. And that's the main key. Isagi needs to stop flying so high, something Ego also said, and just focus on what he's doing. The second piece of evidence ties this up because all throughout the PXG match, we have seen this. If we look at Kaiser going through his development before the Magnus goal, chapter 262, you can see it's evident that Kaiser was fixated on Isagi. He stole away from others to gain everything, but now trying to steal the spotlight away from Isagi, he found himself in a literal mental pitfall. This is counteracted though when Kaiser famously drops his obsession with Isagi and starts focusing on himself, going back to zero. Kaiser starts working with other players in BLUELOCK, drops his pride and also Ness, and scores the Magnus goal. By not fixating on his rival, Kaiser was able to instantly perform better. And keep in mind, Kaiser and Isagi have the same world type ego. The four definitions of ego here are so important for the rest of this theory. The world type ego is different than Rin's ego, which is a self-style ego. When he fixates on a rival like Isagi or Sai, he becomes a better player. So even though Kaiser works better by not fixating on someone, Rin fixating on Isagi makes him play better because he has a different type of ego. It works specifically for him. Different motivations work for different people. But even with Rin, there is still that common trend of going back to zero. In Rin's case, it was his origin of fighting someone amazing, destroying them, and then dying. I don't think Rin is dying in this case, but you get the point. So from those two, we can figure out what Isagi needs to do. He has the same world type ego like Kaiser, so he can't be fixated on someone, unlike Rin, who has a self-type ego, which is fine being fixated on someone. But how he differs from the both of them is that he has a freedom type of ego, the third type, while they have a restrictive type of ego, the fourth type. The restrictive type of ego means that you become better when you feel backed in a corner. The freedom type of ego is the complete opposite. You don't need to be backed in a corner to play better. In fact, being backed in a corner probably makes you worse. And my whole argument is further supported by the fact that Isagi scored the first goal because there was nothing backing Rin or Kaiser in a corner. And we know that they have restrictive ego types, so they weren't playing at their best. Now that they have been feeling the pressure though, their restrictive ego is at play, and they've been playing better and scored their own goals. I think Isagi is forgetting the fact that he is a world type freedom ego. So the more he fixates on someone, the worse it is for him. Just like how Kaiser is fixating on Isagi, it's literally the same case here, but with Kaiser and Rin. The more freedom he has, the better he plays, and the less restricted he is, because again, he isn't a restrictive type of ego. So Isagi needs to drop this fixation on both Rin and Kaiser, so the world type ego will shine more, and he'll have more freedom. And we already know Isagi has the freedom type of ego, so it all makes sense. We've been talking all this time about Isagi dropping his obsession with Rin and Kaiser, but what happens next? What happens when he starts focusing on what he's doing, and what is that final evolution actually gonna be? I think we will see a few things. The first thing is maybe an Isagi backstory or flashback. Considering we got a Rin flashback, a Kaiser flashback, even a Kiora flashback, we're probably gonna get an Isagi flashback. This maybe has something to do with the origin of his ego, or maybe the way he thinks, because we do know Isagi is talented in the brain department. We'll most likely see Isagi focus on that origin of his ego, just like how Rin and Kaiser focused on their origin. And as stupid as it sounds, I genuinely think Isagi will devour himself. Now, does that make any sense? Not really, but it's Blue Lock, and you and I both know they would say something like that. Isagi starts focusing on himself and his ego, quote-unquote devouring himself, and therefore evolving or improving, and maybe even reaching Kaiser and Rin's level, just by doing what he needs to do. When Isagi evolves, he forces others around him to evolve and follow him, just like what happened with Hiyori in the Ubers game. This is bar for bar what Hiyori literally says. People get drawn to Isagi's ego, and in order to not get devoured by him, they evolve at an explosive rate. And there are 3 top candidates for people to evolve alongside Isagi in this match specifically. The first one is the player who just got subbed in, and that's of course Igaguri. Now, considering the monk can only draw fouls, this is the one that kind of reaches, but after Igaguri's foul on Rin, Isagi found out that Rin can be stopped, and the tides of the game can change. Maybe Igaguri's awakening or just his fouling can help Isagi evolve as well. Igaguri also needs to do something like evolve or get an assist to get a high enough salary to survive. And just like Igaguri, Kiora also needs to do more as well. Kiora is kind of this big mystery because he absolutely needs to do more in order to make the top 23, and helping Isagi can be that thing that improves his salary. Maybe Isagi manipulates Kiora to choose him instead of being a borderliner, but I think the final and biggest piece of the puzzle would actually be Ness. Considering that Ness has been doing absolutely nothing and he just disappeared towards the end of the match, he is almost the perfect candidate to help Isagi. He got abandoned by Kaiser, we've seen him talk about Isagi's magic before, and he's literally a passer. Isagi, because he has the freedom type of ego compared to Kaiser and Rin's restrictive type of ego, he works better with others, so every single one of those players could help him out. And considering the last huge piece that wraps up everything, we have Noel Noah's dialogue in chapter 278. This is where he reveals an Aizen type of play and says that he only joined the Neo Egoist League in order to help evolve Kaiser. Now, honestly, Noel Noah is a villain for this. He really got Isagi speaking to him with sparkles in his eyes, had him interested in everything, and then broke his heart by saying that this is why you shouldn't meet your idols. Noel Noah's ego is the fact that he wants to become better. He wants to have a rival that poses a threat to him. So he went to the NEL to basically make Kaiser his rival. I think there's a few fishy things going on here. Honestly, I don't really know if Noel Noah is telling the truth here. Maybe he's just rubbing salt in the wound for Isagi by saying that he only cares for Kaiser's evolution. Because as Noel Noah said, adversity brings about evolution. And knowing that Isagi needs to evolve, he may have said this so Isagi really self-reflects and focuses on himself, instead of being hung up on Kaiser, Rin, and now Noel Noah. Considering the fact that Noel Noah said he heard Isagi's exact philosophy from Ego Jinpachi, who happened to be his first rival, and Noel Noah is also looking for a rival, Isagi is probably a likely candidate too. He just wants to evolve Isagi by saying that he only cares about Kaiser's evolution. This will lead to him focusing on himself, which then proves Noel Noah wrong by showing he's as big of a threat to him as Kaiser. Not by focusing on them as rivals, but by improving what he has. Isagi focusing on himself and bringing out his origin could improve his play so much that it may result in the final goal. If a player like Ness, Igaguri, or Kiora helps or assists him, it brings up their salary for the top 23 or just evolves them as players. Considering that Isagi is a world-type ego, he needs to get out of the self-type ego tendencies of focusing on Rin and Kaiser, which will lead to his final evolution. This final awakening or evolution and maybe a goal will solidify his #1 spot, finally surpassing Rin, setting up Kaiser versus Isagi for the U20 World Cup, and then pose himself as a threat to Noel Noah. Noah. As you can see, almost all of the dots connect here. This is the best theory I can come up with for what we have for Isagi's final awakening as we head into the end of the NEL. Let me know what you think of this theory, or if you have any other thoughts on Isagi or how the rest of this game will play out. We're actually so close to the Neo Egoist League ending. Quick shout out to a few people. It's Rez in the comment section for pointing out the Ego Jinpachi dialogue, Leif and Lucky for joining the membership as well. I appreciate y'all so much. And I appreciate everyone who has made it to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next one.